mentioned, everyone is on mute just to try to help with background noise and distractions. And again, as we go through, we can determine if we're going to use the chat function or allow participation verbally. So lastly, I wanted to also let you know that the month of May, we are going virtual all of the month of May, because many of you may know there is a possibility that shelter-in-place order may be released on or around May 7th. We've also heard May 15th. As I am kind of tracking things, I doubt that we will be back to our operation until probably sometime in June. So anticipating that, we've created a Money Matters series for the month of May. So based on this conversation, on May 6th, we're going to have a number of lenders come in the same platform to talk about what their lending institutions are doing to address some of the economic concerns of COVID. On May 14th, we're going to have some real estate professionals talk about the market and what they're seeing as far as homeownership options, buying and selling options. And then on May 21st, we're going to have a host of financial professionals talking to us about what we need to consider in regards to our legacy planning. And then the last week of May, May 28th, we will have a real estate investor talking about does it still make sense to invest in real estate post-COVID. So Tisha, if you have any interest in participating in any of these Money Matters, please notify Tisha either in your chat function or email, because I know that you guys have been communicating via email. So I wanted just to jump into the topic of conversation. We were all introduced to this new world based on a health crisis known as the pandemic of COVID-19. And that really is where the focus and attention has been. And as you've heard on the news, there is now the rumbling and impact of the economy based on businesses shutting down, people not being able to get to work, people losing their jobs. And I have to be honest, from my financial background, that's where I've been spending a lot of my time tracking what is going to happen once we can kind of get back to normal. Some may say we're going into a recession. Recession means a short period of time where you see a down curve in the economy, or a depression where it's a longer time. And that time period is basically 2 quarters. So a recession means that there's a downward trend in the economy. People aren't spending a lot of money, and that doesn't last more than 2 quarters. So if we were at the beginning of the year, it'd be from January to June, but there would be an expectation that come July, things would be back to normal. If it were to pass through those first 2 quarters, then that's where you start to feel that there might be a depression. And we're really not sure what the aftermath of this is until things, quote unquote, get back to normal. But if you are, listening to some of the economic predictions, people are really concerned that this could be moving into a depression because of the number of people that are out of work, the number of businesses that are at risk of closing or are already closed. So what does that mean to you and looking toward homeownership? The one thing that I will say is this is also being compared to what happened in 08 and 09 due to the economic crisis related to the debacle of real estate. I think that there will be similar impact, but because the source is different, it's going to look and feel different. And I would assume that all of us are old enough to have lived that experience in 08 and 09, which really kind of took everybody by surprise. So here's the one thing that we have for us. We've been through that, so we know what to expect. So there are some things I'm going to suggest you start planning and preparing for so that you become recession/depression prepared, meaning that, if you're currently working, really assess if your job is at risk, and if you need to pivot, dust off that resume, look at, possibly getting another employment that is stable so that you don't have to wait until you're unemployed. This is also a time to look at your budget and your cash flow and your finances. We've had this false sense of insecurity that, the economy was doing well, so we probably weren't. has focused on what money was going out, what money is coming in. And with all of us being in place, we have some immediate savings. We're not paying as much on gas, we're not paying tolls, there's, no lunches, no clothing, a lot of things that we would normally do in our day, which could be easy cash grabs to help start the savings process. And the reason that this is important is because we are finding that lenders are starting to become more stringent on their underwriting guidelines, which means that in the past, prior to COVID, there were down payment assistance programs, there were subsidies, community lending programs. Many institutions will continue to maintain their community lending programs, which means that if you are a first-time home buyer, have not been on a deed or title within 5 years, you're considered a first-time home buyer, and you can take advantage of their program with a minimum of 3.5% down for a down payment. Now, prior to COVID, there were other programs like the Oakland Down Payment Assistance Program, Cal FHA, DSFA. There's a list of down payment programs that you could have included to help with your down payment. So we are finding that lenders are suspending some of those programs because what their concern is, they need to understand what the fallout of their existing mortgage portfolio is going to be if people have lost their jobs and can't pay their mortgages, and they don't want to go into a new market with the uncertainty if jobs will still be there 6 months, 12 months after you secured a mortgage. So they are buckling down on their underwriting criteria where that cash savings is going to be even more critical for you. So I would encourage that as you go down this process, that the goal is that you are close to that 3 to 3.5%. And what that would mean, if you're buying a $100,000 home, 3% would be $3,000 down, 3.5% would be $3,500. Now, what I can say with these lending institutions, they still may have their own internal grant programs that will help with closing costs, because the closing cost is different than the down payment. The down payment is the money that you put into the transaction, the skin in the game that you have. The closing costs are the hard dollar costs that are required, the appraisal, the inspection, title fees, fee for service, which which are hard dollar costs. So the bank still will have possibly some grants or subsidies to help you support those fees, but the down payment assistance will be possibly more on your responsibility. You may not have immediate access to the down payment programs that we've had before. Now, what I can say, there is the WISH program that is available. It is income and household restricted. So it goes based on the area median income of your county and household size. And the area median income is they look at all the incomes within that county divided by the number of people and get an average. So you have to meet that average along with the household size. The good news with that WISH program, if you meet those income restrictions, if you have $5,000 saved, they will match you 3.5 times, actually 4.5. So the maximum that you could get toward a mortgage is $22,500. So there is that program that is available. Municipalities like the city of Oakland, that their down payment assistance program, they have put on hold. They will actually be one of the lenders that will be speaking on May 6th. So if you want to know more specifically about the banks, their programs, and or down payment programs that these institutions are accepting, that would be another call you want to be on. So cash is going to continue to be king. This is the time to get close to your budget, understand where some of your cash flow challenges are, see how you can tighten things up, and see how close you are. And I would say the benchmark is 3%. If that is a challenge, then that's where we come in as a counseling agency to look at your individual situation and, go under every rock and turn over everything that we can to see if there's any other subsidies. But that's kind of the overarching standpoint as far as subsidies. Banks are taking a step back. They're concerned about the numbers they're hearing, so they are suspending some of these programs. So that's one thing to consider. So I'm going to leave you with the challenge before we move off of cash flow is to think about this ratio, 20, 50, 30. So as you're going through your cash flow and your budget, the goal is that you're saving 20% of your net income, and that's, after taxes, what you get paid every 2 weeks. The 50% should be going towards your debt and expenses, living expenses, everything you have to pay. And then the 30% could be for those unexpected disposable income things that you don't think about. Now, if at first, if it's too conservative where you can't just put 20% away, then fluctuate the numbers. Maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 10%. You can then get up to that 20%. But what we always say is a little bit of something is a whole lot better than a whole lot of nothing. So this is the time to kind of tighten things up, figure out where you can find those resources, create some goals for yourself. And if we were having a class, if you're doing this with others, and this is the time where I would say you have a money meeting where you come together, put your goals together. If there are children a part of this conversation, and I think this is critical of how we frame this information, because a lot of the behaviors that we have as adults is how we were introduced to money in the past. So if the children are believing that, we can't have anything, things are really tight, they're gonna walk away with, having a mindset of lack. So there's a way you structure it. Hey, we are really working toward this goal. So, every time we go to Target, I may not be able to get you, everything because we're working on this house. Or let's talk about the birthday parties or things that we need to do this month. Let's put it on the budget. And if things come up outside of that budget, you can say, well, see, we didn't talk about it this month, so we might have to think about if we can do it or not. So framing is going to be important as you're working with family members related to this conversation. The other thing I want to talk about, and from using your chat box, outside of cash, what do you think is the other significant component to buying a house? Just so that we can get some interaction and engagement based on what you've been tracking or if you've been going through the process. Outside of money, what's the other thing that is highly important in this conversation?
I'm getting a lot of credit scores,
Yes.
credit score, debt to income.
You are right on target. So Simone, I'm going to ask you to pull up the slide because this is also something that I really want you to study. And we can send you this link, but if you've been to any classes and based on your responses, this isn't any new news, but I think it's now a matter of understanding how to manage it. There's always been a lot of mystery of how a credit score is determined, and here it is. 35% is based on your payment history. 30% is what we consider utilization or the amount you owe. 15% is the length of credit. 10% is the type of credit, whether it's a fixed loan or installment loan. And then the last 10% is new credit accumulation, which we also know as inquiry. So 65% of your overall score is based on your credit history and your amount owed. So what that tells you is you get one late pay that can really upset the apple cart, as they say. The amount owed, which is, I think, a big part of your budget conversation. The rule of thumb is this: if you have $1,000 of available credit, meaning you add up all your credit cards, you have 300 here, 500 here, 200 here, you have access to $1,000. That 30% would mean that you don't want your outstanding debt or bills to be more than $300 off of that $1,000. If you can manage these two things, the amount owed on your credit cards and your payment history, these things could quickly advance your credit score. Why is this important? Because prior to COVID, we could potentially find a lender that would accept, qualify you for a home loan as a first-time home buyer as low as 580 as a credit score. But the sweet spot has typically been between 620, 640. Now, lending institutions again are tightening their reins, and now the credit score, some, not all, but a consideration is 680. So if you have not pulled your credit score, and I know many people use online vehicles like Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, and a number of others, or banks will provide you your credit score. These are not your true credit scores. It's a good temperature check. But when you pull your true credit score directly from the credit bureaus, you will tend to find that the online services are typically 10 or 15 points off in either your favor or not in your favor. And the reason being is that many of these do not pull from all three credit bureaus. So as an organization, if you're going through our counseling work, we do pull your credit report. It's a tri-merge report, which means it's the three credit bureaus, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. And these are the credit reports that a lender will look at. And it's also important to know, if you have not seen your credit report but would like to, when we pull it, it's considered a soft pull, so it does not go in as an inquiry. And as you saw on the slide, that anytime you inquire to get new credit, it could be a ding. So it'd be a good opportunity to see where you are in credit. And the goal there would be to get to a 680 credit score. And again, not all lenders are having that guideline, but I think right now it's best to work on the conservative, work on achieving the highest number, and knowing that there may be some wiggle room. And the other thing is why a budget is so important is that this is not the time to miss a payment. However, and this is something else I wanted to bring to your attention, if you do hold credit cards, you probably have been seeing a lot of information from your lender or creditor saying, hey, if you're having issues related to COVID, please call. Please take advantage of that, because if you start to see that you're having a financial hardship, the best thing to do is to get ahead of it and take advantage of any of their forbearance programs, any of their forgiveness programs, or miss a payment program, any of those things before it gets too serious. And the other thing to keep note of, which we're seeing, is that creditors are actually going into people's credit profiles. So if you got a credit card in 2018, they may go in to see how you've been maintaining credit. And if your utilization is higher than what they feel comfortable with, or you've gotten more debt than when you applied, they may send you a letter to say, hey, we're closing your card. So be mindful of that too, not to expect that that may happen as well. And again, from your credit history standpoint, or the length of time, that's also an impact. So you may also want to start calling your creditors just to understand how your credit, if you've been a good payer, there hasn't been any issues on your card, what would be some of their considerations in closing your card? Because, good, and I'm going to ask for the thumbs up. Do you want your JCPenney's card from 1989 to be closed? Does that impact your length of credit? I gave you the answer, thumbs up. Yes, that impacts your credit. So you would not want that JCPenney's card to be impacted. So whatever you got to do to keep that 1989 card, you want to keep that. So this is the time to really get comfortable in managing your debt, understanding what you have, figuring out how you can reduce it. If you're finding that you are going to be financially challenged, start having those conversations now. And again, squeeze out what you can. And most importantly, I can tell you, credit score points can change within about 60 days. Because here's what happens. Your creditors report to these credit bureaus every 30 days. So if you made a payment on the 5th and they reported on the 1st, it's going to take a 30-day cycle for the credit bureaus to get that new information. So it does take time for positive information to show, but as soon as they start seeing the reduction of your credit utilization, that's where you're able to get those quick points. So if you are in position to start paying off that $300 target bill because it's a $50 outstanding, then pay it off. Let the small stuff, take care of really quickly. Those tend to be the easiest thing to manage. So let me ask you this. Why are there 3 credit bureaus? And you can answer in your chat box. Why do you think that there are 3? Are we getting any responses, Simone, as far as why there are 3 credit bureaus?
No, you went out. Can you say it one more time?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just asking why you think there's 3 credit bureaus. Why do you need to pull all 3 credit reports if you have been seeing your experience? Why do you need to see Equifax?
So someone has said each report and capture different things for checks and balances. They all report different things. Not every bureau covers every creditor.
Yep, so hopefully that means somebody's been to our class. You're exactly right. These credit reporting agencies are subscription services. So a Macy's may not subscribe to a TransUnion and only subscribes to Equifax. So the reason that a lender is pulling all 3, because you might have some credit on one report that's not showing on the other. And when they're going through their evaluation, they're going to do the average score, because Equifax might give you a 700, Experian might give you a 650, and TransUnion might give you a 680. So they're going to give you the average score of those 3 bureaus. So that's why it's important when managing your credit that you're looking at all 3 reports. Using your thumbs up, how many have pulled their free annual credit report for 2020? Anyone? Okay, that's okay. The good news, if you did not know, as a consumer, every year you are afforded to get your annual credit report by going to annualcreditreport.com. It gives you the credit report, but not the score. Now, you can pay the $19.99 to get the score, but you'll pay that for each credit bureau. But it is good to see your full credit history from the time that you got your first credit card. Because as you go through the home buying process, they go way back. So there might be some things that show up in their kind of backdoor credit review that may not show up on the credit bureaus, but the annual credit report shows you everything. And it's always good to know, because many of us have been impacted by identity theft. So it's always good to know what's been opened in the year, if there's been other addresses that have been used that you're not familiar with, if there's jobs that's showing up on your credit report that you've never worked. This is a good indication to make sure that your information is protected. Okay. So we talked about the cash, we talked about the credit. The last thing I want to talk about, and we can definitely open it up for questions. We can see how it goes. I see that we have 44 participants. So if you would like to ask your question, you can raise your hand in the participant section, and it should allow you to raise your hand. Simone will see you and then give you access to speak, to ask your question, or you can continue to use the chat box. But one of the things that we do at Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services that's a little different than other housing counseling services is we have a lender ready program. So what that means is, and prior to COVID, you would go to an 8-hour class, you would be prepared to get your certificate, you would say, hey, I want to see where I am, how much I could afford, what a lender might think if I submitted an application. So through our Lender Ready program, you would complete one of our applications. We would get all of the financial information that a lender would look at. We would pull your credit. And for the lack of a better term, we would pre-qualify you, saying based on what we see, based on what we know the programs to be out there, we suggest you go to these 3 banks. And then what the banks have agreed to do is do something called the soft review. where they will take all the information that we've gathered, take a look at it and say, hey, looks good, or we need them to pay this off, or we need more information about this or that. The benefit to you as client is we are doing the legwork for you, so you're not walking into B of A on a Monday, Citibank on a Wednesday, and Chase Bank on a Friday. So it lessens the footwork. And if you have been in this process some time, you know that this is a whole new world. It's like talking a different language, and we tend to speak the same lingo and lingo, so we can kind of help communicate what it is you're trying to achieve. The reason I bring that up is not knowing when we will be able to safely gather. We haven't quite figured out how to put this 8-hour course on an online platform like this, because 8 hours would be a long time to keep all of your attention on the computer. And there are some assessments throughout the class to make sure that you're understanding, because when we give you that certificate, we have to feel confident we've given you all the information you need to make good decisions related to the home buying process. So in lieu of that, what we have offered is if anyone is on the phone that is actually going through the home buying process, and the lender has said you need this HUD class or you need to complete the pre-purchase education, we have an online application called eHome America. And you can go to our website, which is Richmond NHS, go to programs, you'll see e-learning, and you can take the online course. Now, it's typically $99, but while we're in this kind of limbo, if you're in contract, we will waive that fee for you so you can get that certificate, since we don't have a class to present to you. But in the meantime, our Lender Ready program is still available to you. So if you are still exploring and needing to know where you sit in this process and want to work closely with us as we're learning too, the nuances and potential changes of what the lenders will be doing post-COVID, you can still start that process with us. Tisha would be your point of contact. Again, that would be completing one of our applications. That would mean providing us all of the financial documentation we need. That means getting your credit report, and we will evaluate and let you know where you sit. Typically, to get into the Lender Ready program, we would require a minimum credit score of 620, but because we know that credit scores are increasing, we will be increasing that number to about 640, just so that we can make sure that you are as prepared as possible. But here's the deal. If your credit score is not at 640, it's at 620, it's at 580, whatever it is. If, you know, the income is not quite where it needs to be, there is still resources that can support you. Myself and I, we will be working through our rental program, helping you with your budget, trying to squeeze out money, helping you with credit, so you can still stay engaged in this process wherever you may sit related to your credit and related to cash. So I'm going to press the pause button there for me to stop talking and allow people to start asking their questions. And I wanted just to address one of the questions. I thought old credit, and this is from Lee Mason, I thought old credit falls off after 7 years. That's true, Lee. So that would not impact your, I would say this, that is true. However, a lender doesn't just look at credit score, they look at delinquency. So if there was a delinquency that was 7 years that shows up, but you haven't been able to build up any other credit, that delinquency could be impactful. The other thing to note is that not all credit falls off at the same time, so it will be dependent on the type of credit that it was. And we could provide that information because there is a schedule. So if you are managing your credit, looking at the credit report, and that is a good point because you do want to know how long things are supposed to stay, because we also know that credit bureaus are notorious for inaccuracies and errors. So it's good to know when things are supposed to fall off so you know what to dispute. And another question is the free credit report per calendar year? Yes, it is, but here would be the magic, and here's what some people have done. So January 1, you pull Experian March or April, you pull TransUnion. Close to the end of the year, you pull Equifax. So that way you're staggering when you're getting information. So if there are any changes, you may see it on one report. Instead of seeing them all, and then you don't see anything for 12 months, it's a way to kind of capture new information on the different reports.
Sorry, Nikki, say that part one more time. You kind of went out.
I'm sorry, I was sharing that for the annual credit report, it is a calendar year, but what people will do is stagger when they pull all three reports. So they may pull one in January, another one in March, and another one close to the end of the year. So that way you can start tracking any nuances or changes in the credit report instead of pulling them all at one time and not seeing anything on your credit for the next 12 months. Another question came in, does your program pertain to Solano County? You live in Fairfield. Well, we're neighbors. I just bought a home in Fairfield earlier this year. So let me tell you, I'm living the dream like all of you. I had to track pricing. When I started my process in late 2018, working in Richmond, I said, well, I love Richmond. I'll buy in Richmond. Didn't buy in Richmond, started the process the summer of 2019, and the prices had increased. So I just kept going down the highway and wound up in Fairfield. But to answer your question, Cynthia, our program is statewide. So wherever you're looking to purchase in the state of California, we can assist. We are not county or city-based. Is Keisha available to start the process tomorrow? Yes, we need things to do. No, we're very busy, but not too busy for you. So yes, you can email Keisha to say you're on this, this Money Matters, and you want to get the Lender Ready process started. She will get you started. And until we understand how we can interact and engage, as you see, we have Zoom, so if we have to meet one-on-one virtually, we'll email, do whatever we need to do to work with our process.
Nikki, I can help you with the questions.
Okay.
You said that the City of Oakland program is on hold. Do you have any idea how long it is on hold for?
Join us on May 6th and hear from Nikki Duisberg, who's with the City of Oakland, that will talk explicitly about the City of Oakland program and where it sits. I think right now there has been no dates of when money is going to be released, because everybody's kind of like, let's wait and see what the 6.6 million of unemployment really means. But if you want specific information about the City of Oakland program, Nikki Duisberg, program director, will be able to call me.
We had someone raise their hand, Aisha Walker. I'm going to go ahead and unmute her for her to answer her ask her question.
Fantastic.
Hi,
you're on.
thank you. Thank y'all. I do have a question about credit score.
One second, baby.
Credit score and like contesting negative marks on the credit score. Do y'all provide services for that, or have somebody?
Yes, we do. I will say we have a very good general working knowledge of credit and how to get things removed. However, if we need to take a deeper dive, or if there's something related to something that's legal, we work with an organization called HERA that can work with you more diligently about it. But taking a look at your credit score, giving you a general understanding and what the standard dispute process is, we'd be able to help.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. It looks like someone's trying to buy, has a goal of buying in a year and a half. Should they wait or put in an application now?
Get started now. I mean, 2020 is around. The way that time is moving, a year and a half will be up before you know it. So I would say it would make a lot of sense to at least see where you are, so you know what you're planning for in that year and a half. What we have found is that most people are better prepared than what they think they are. So I would say at least get started now, so you know what your timing really is.
Great. Someone has actually attended one of our classes, and they were working with us post-COVID. What do they do if their certificate expires before they find a home?
Well, what we have done is if you've been actively involved working with the counselor, continue your education, we can extend that certificate. So we could have a one-on-one conversation, seeing when the certificate expires, when you are planning to buy a home, see how we can engage you so that you've been active in our program and process so that it makes sense for us to extend. So if you can email me at Nikki Beasley, my first and last name, which is up at the top, by my face, at East Bay. And actually, Simone, if you wouldn't mind typing that in for me,
Yep.
I'm in the chat box. But you can email me. We can see where you are and see what we need to do.
Okay, another person asked, is this also an affordable home for first-time home buyers?
So I'm not sure of your question, so I'm going to try to answer it. And if I don't answer it, please make sure I clarify. So one thing we did not talk about, which is the other big elephant in the room, is affordability. So here's the benefit of COVID. It's expected that property values are going to go down about 27 to 30%. So prior to COVID, it was maybe impossible to think about living in some of these areas. But there's going to be a decline in value, which will be a benefit to you. So, excuse me. So when you say first-time home buyer homes, there are programs called BMRs, below market rates, that have been set aside for first-time home buyers. Not all city and counties have them. City of Oakland has a few, I think San Ramon, and again, if BMRs is something that you have interest in, we can assist to find out where those properties are. And what that means to you as the homeowner is that there is a commitment that those properties will be below market, meaning that if the house down the street is $500,000, your house is going to be below that. It comes with something called deed restrictions because it is designed to maintain affordability. So that means when you get ready to leave, there might be a max in which you can sell that property for so that it stays affordable. There may also be some income guidelines of the people buying the home, what they can make to buy that home. So it is a way of getting into home ownership. You just need to understand what that is, and not the only consideration, but one of the major considerations is knowing that you buy a house at $475, you've been there 5 years, 10 years, it's now worth $600,000. If it's a BMR, you might only be able to sell it for $500,000. The impact to you is you don't get that equity. And why do we buy homes? Because we want to generate that wealth to where you can leave one home. You bought it at $400, it's now worth $600. You have $200,000 that you can take and do some things with. When you get into first-time home buyer housing programs, sometimes there's a limitation to the equity that you might be able to get. And not that that's a bad thing, you just need to know what it is and manage your expectation. But many times you just got to get in where you fit in, and if that's the only way you can get into a house, then that might be an important consideration. So if I did not ask that question, either raise your hand or put in the chat box and I'll be happy to clarify. And I know, Simone, you're helping me, but I just saw something that came up with the multi-units for BMRs. So no, typically BMRs are single-family homes, but I do want to bring you to your attention that most community lending programs will allow you to buy a multi-family property up to 4 units. The beauty about that is, what does that mean? Let's say you want to buy a duplex. Many lenders will offset your mortgage payment based on the perceived rents that unit that you own will provide you an income. So what that means is that can help offset your mortgage. So as you're going through this process, there are multiple ways to get into home ownership. We tend to work just strictly on the traditional mortgage side, but know that multifamily units could be a consideration. But there are cooperative models there are land trust models and a host of other ways to get into homeownership. Oh, so Lee, I like your question. I didn't even look at it, but I just mentioned the land trust. I'm not going to get into it here, and I am thinking about putting together another Money Matters conversation about the different options of ownership. But typically what land trust is, you don't own the land, you just own what's on top of it. And again, there could be some consideration of what your equity you can get out of it when you sell, as well as it does extend, over legacy, where you can gift that property to, other individuals in your family. But I think that it is becoming more of a popular model. Oakland Land Trust has done some significant work in the city of Oakland. So we are considering putting something similar like this so we can take a deeper dive. And I see here what I define first-time home buyer again. So that means you have not been on a mortgage in the last 5 years. So if you were a part of 08, 09, you lost your home, you walked away, and foreclosed, whatever the issue was, it is now 2020, you are considered a first-time home buyer. Any other questions you see, Simone, or anyone else?
We have some people asking about Wish. Can they apply for Wish now? How can we join the Wish program, and is it available for Fairfield?
Yes, so the Wish program became available mid-April. There are banks that have the Wish program on their platform, which says if you go to Bank of America, let's say, they have a Wish program, and they will only be able to distribute those funds if you get a Bank of America mortgage. There are some institutions that have the pool of money, but you can go to any institution, just tell me where your mortgage is, and we will attach the Wish to that mortgage. So if Wish is an interest or consideration, then yes, you would want to get in contact with us, because we know the lenders that have the program. Up until this year, we were the administrators of Wish for Mechanics Bank. So Nye is very familiar with the guidelines and the process. So if Wish is a consideration, please let us know so we can evaluate your situation and help you through that process. But money is available. The only thing to note is that you do need to have some savings, and the minimum savings is, the benchmark is $5,000.
We have another question. Can you provide some information regarding equity COVID-19 and post-COVID-19?
Okay. So equity pre-COVID means that, real estate market is booming. You got in, at an affordable amount, and now properties are $800,000 when you bought at $500,000. You could pull out $300,000 worth of equity. And equity simply is the amount that you owe versus the value. And you just do the subtraction, and that's what typically you can pull out and do what many people do: buy other properties, help their children through school, pay for that wedding, a host of things. You don't go out and buy planes, trains, and automobiles, but that's pre-COVID. The challenge that we have now is, as I mentioned, the property values are going to decrease. So that $800,000 home may now only be $700,000. So now your equity isn't $200,000, it's only $100,000. But this is something really important to note. Equity real estate transactions are very much like the stock market. You don't realize the loss until you sell. So let's think about it. In 08, I owned a home in Stockton. It was $177,000. 2019, it was probably $300,000. So as long as I didn't sell in 08 and I was able to hold on to it, now I can benefit from equity. So there's definitely going to be some peaks and valleys on this ride. So just because equity value may be lower post-COVID, we don't know what the trends are going to be going forward. And on any economic matrix that you look at, typically real estate values have a 10-year cycle. So every 10 years, it'll have a peak and a valley. Think about it. It was 08, 09, devastating. But when we got to 2019, 2018, it was the height of the market. So if there's going to be a downturn in 2020, and I'm no economist, but we can only imagine in the next 7, 10, or maybe 12 years, you will see an incline. So the benefit is you always buy at the lowest amount. So although you may not be getting the benefit of the most equity right now, you are getting the benefit of buying a property at a lower price point.
We have 2 more questions about Wish.
Mm-hmm.
One is, does it have a required credit score?
Yes, it does. On top of my mind, I can't tell you what that is. But if you are moving through the WISH program, that would be one of the considerations. But off the top of my head, I do not know.
And what about VA loans? Have they been negatively affected by COVID-19?
No, and I can tell you, VA benefits are probably the most underutilized benefit that there is in the mortgage process. So if you are a veteran, a family member is a veteran, definitely would take advantage of it because benefits are so great. And many, veterans, aren't always clear about what that program is and the benefits that they have. Now, what I will say, if you're a veteran, you do want to talk to us, because since many veterans don't use the program, not all banks are best familiar. So the transaction, may not be as clean and smooth. So there's some banks that are very familiar, others that are not, and we definitely would want to put you in the hands of someone who's familiar with the program.
We have a question about foreclosure. Any guidance for buying a foreclosed property?
So as a first-time home buyer, you're not going to be in position to take advantage of that, because most foreclosures, well, let me back up. The foreclosures as we know it, where they're selling these properties on, the court steps, the lender is not going to lend you money until they can vet and assess the property. So those are typically cash deals, meaning you've gotten what they call a hard money lender that is giving you the money to buy a property on site. However, if you have been going through Zillow, you might start seeing properties that show pre-foreclosure, meaning that the lender has started the foreclosure process, but it hasn't gone into foreclosure. So those may be properties, and that's something you would want to work with your lender, or your realtor on, to maybe try to get in contact with that person, saying, hey, I see, you might be having some problems. I would like to buy your home. The benefit to that seller, potential seller, is they can get out of the property without a foreclosure. They can live with some integrity. Some folks try to hold on to the very end, and they have their own reasons. So I would say pre-foreclosure would definitely be the opportunity, but foreclosure, you would definitely not be using a community lending program for that.
Okay, and I think the last question we have is, someone asks again about the VA loan. Can they purchase a home with the VA loan?
Yes, so we have an interesting story. We had a woman that had been working through a foreclosure process for many years, lost her home to foreclosure, but her father, who was a veteran, was living in the home. So they were able to take advantage of his veteran benefits that he had never taken advantage of, and was able to buy a new home. So again, I would definitely want to have a conversation to understand what the veteran situation is. But yes, typically the veteran has to be living with you if you're going to partake in this process. But it would be great to figure out how to leverage it if you can.
That was our last question. So we're all set with the questions.
Okay. So what we're going to be doing now is putting in your chat box a survey. Because again, if you are participating in any of our classes, we always want to know how we're doing, and definitely want to know how we're doing with this new format. So we're going to ask that it's a Survey Monkey. So if you could take the time to complete the survey, let us know how we did. If there's other topics that you'd like to hear about, we definitely want to hear that. For those that would like to take advantage of, assessing where they are to see if homeownership makes sense today for them right this moment, get in touch with Tisha so we can start that process. If you just need some assistance in evaluating credit and things of that nature, happy to help there. But as we have been saying, our motto is changing the narrative of homeownership. And it was important to have this conversation because I didn't want you to be dismayed by the information that you were hearing, that it's still possible to buy a home. May not, be able to get in at the 620, maybe 680. You may not be able to get 100% down payment assistance, but there are ways to do it. So please allow us the opportunity to work through this process with you. We work very diligently and we'll be very honest about where you sit. And as aggressive as you want to be, we can be as aggressive with you to make sure that you do take advantage of many of the benefits, meaning property values are going down. So you definitely want to get in if you are in position.
Great.
Okay.
So I did put the survey link in the chat box. In the chat box, you'll also find Nikki's email address as well as Tisha's email address to assist with next steps regarding the application.
Okay. Well, you know where to find us. And even though our office is closed, if you want to set up a Zoom meeting to do one-on-one, however we can interact and keep you guys engaged and motivated in this process, we're here to assist. So thank you for your time. Give me a thumbs up if there's no more questions. We're all good.
Yep, we got a lot of thank yous.
Okay, well, we thank you for taking time out of your day and hope to be in touch with you soon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hope to see you on May 6th so you can talk to the lenders. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.